preparing to live stream. I tried to start live streaming on Facebook, and I think because Facebook is so saturated with people, like it's not really working very well. So I'm going to be sharing this through YouTube onto Facebook. So give me a sec. And it is already live on YouTube, just so you know. Okay. All right. Well, so I've been calling these like series of conversations, That's the Tea, because I'm dorky, but welcome to That's the Tea. I have a mug. It says this coffee is making me awesome. There's actually water in it. But so for those of you who are watching today, we're just talking about just different ways for faith formation during quarantine, and Grace Woods is with me. I personally know Grace. I served at Tonganoxie United Methodist Church when she was I guess you were a junior and a senior. And so we got to work at the same church together because you were our intern and you were in charge of our nursery and you did all of the cool stuff. So it's really great to get to connect with you again and to watch you grow in your faith and in your calling. You are now a senior at KU, and I'm going to just turn it over to you. Tell us more about who you are and what you do and what are your plans for the future, all that good stuff.
Yes. My name, like Melissa said, my name is Grace Woods, and I'm hopefully will be graduating with the graduation ceremony in May. We'll see about that one. And I'm studying strategic communications in the School of Journalism and minoring in psychology at KU. I have been there for 3 years, so I'll graduate a year early and then head to seminary in the fall, Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Chicago, and I'll be getting a dual master's degree there of divinity and social work. And so I'll be there for 4 years total. Currently, I serve at my campus ministry called Westwood House. We're a shared ministry with United Methodists and Lutherans. And so it's quite the hodgepodge of people, especially on a very secular campus. So it's really a unique intersection of a lot of different identities, which is really interesting and not something I've gotten to experience before. So I'm really grateful for that. And this role there, I serve as the director of community outreach. So I do everything from all of our freshman ministries to leading small groups, to helping with a lot of the tech kind of stuff and the media creation. And then one of my favorite parts of my ministry is prayer yoga. And so I combine scripture and meditation into yoga practice and share it with students once a week. So yeah.
That is so cool. So how long have you been doing prayer yoga?
This is my 5th semester technically doing it. So I started it the fall of my freshman year, but not as like a weekly occurrence. And then ever since the spring semester of my freshman year, I did it once a week. And so before the quarantine situation happening and COVID-19, we met once a week. Anywhere from 2 to 15 students would come, and we would do a yoga practice with mats provided by my campus ministry, and lots of different people come to these. It's a very open environment, so whether or not they're Christian or not, or even religious, it's really a great space for people to come together and practice and share those different thoughts and spiritual practices together. And something that I really dove deep into when I got to college was, thanks to my campus minister, Susan Mercer, was really working on forming spiritual practices that were out of the box and that were very special to me. And I really just don't like sitting alone and reading scripture every single day alone. Like, I want to do something that's more active and stimulating for my brain and my body and my mind, and sometimes with other people. And so that's where I kind of came up with the idea. I know lots of other people have done different variations, but it wasn't happening. So I just did it myself. And I really am grateful. And it's really grown into a bigger ministry than I would have thought. So I'm happy for that.
That's awesome. So had you experienced prayer yoga somewhere else, or was this just something like you were already doing yoga and you wanted to integrate the two? What was that process like for you?
So a lot of it came from having discussions on how to make like daily, and this even started when I went to like a church camp called Institute in the Great Plains Conference. And we would talk about even just like how to pray while you're brushing your teeth or how to pray as you're getting ready in the morning. Um, Pastor Gina taught us that. Thanks, Pastor Gina. And so I kind of took that as I went into college, and Susan was challenging us to kind of think about how we do that in our walks to class every morning. And if I were to go on a run, sometimes instead of listening to music, I would pray that way. But there's already such a spiritual connection in yoga. And so I just kind of naturally came across it. And as I was kind of testing out new things that were interesting and still like constantly feeding my soul. And so that's kind of how I came up with it. I know other people have done it. I've never been to a prayer yoga class of anyone else's, but also Eduardo Busan's guided meditations. They're so good. But that's kind of like parts of that are in there. And I think that's like something that can definitely be implemented into a physical practice as well. So
yeah, I love that. I think it can be so tempting to kind of like separate the mind, the body, and the spirit. And when you think about spiritual practices, they're oftentimes very like, it includes stillness, it includes being quiet, it includes almost like a separation from your body, like an out of body type of experience. But yoga especially, but I think movement in general, like it's so neat to see. I think we're seeing kind of I don't want to say trend in like a bad way, but a movement toward integrating an embodiment in a really exciting way. Is your internet, is it my internet or your internet that's free? Am I freezing?
you were freezing a little bit, but not terribly.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think just everybody's on the internet now. So anyway, so I really appreciate this movement toward integrating all aspects of our humanity as we grow in our faith. I think that's so important. What do you think about that?
I think so too. And maybe I'm pursuing the deacon track for ordinations. Maybe it's like
Good.
the kind of rebellious deacon part of me that's like, I'm going to do something different than everyone else and it's going to be fun. People are gonna like it. So I think that's something too, is like, I'm very conscientious about like, why am I doing this way? And why am I doing it inside the walls of the church? Like, why does it need to happen this way to have community and to have connection with other children of God? And so to like kind of take that and play with it and test the boundaries has been really fun.
That's awesome. So tell me about like what has been the reception on KU's campus? Like what types of people come to this? Are you seeing a different group of people than you would if you were to have, say, like just guided meditation without yoga, or just like a prayer request time? What does the makeup of it look like, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from students on campus?
So some people are really interested, some people are very confused. And I think some people are confused sometimes about having spaces where people who aren't just like traditional Christianity, this is how we pray, this is how we bow our heads, like they're kind of alarmed by that. And so for them to kind of come and experience it is exciting for them. And then usually they are excited to come back and kind of see how that works. We have an interesting mix of people. So some people are Christian and religious and come to our other events at Westwood House, and some are just from other organizations, or I think we've even had like people from the Jewish community come before, people who are agnostic or atheists. So it's really just a place for people to share that community, because that's kind of our main focus at Westwood, but also we use scripture along with it. So there's always a way for them to connect with a God or their God and kind of have a spiritual connection while sharing community, which is, I think, one of the most important things about like a campus ministry specifically. So
That's awesome. That's really cool. I love what you said about deacon. So are you a certified candidate
Yes.
at this point? Okay, you are. So obviously I'm a deacon too. And this work that you're doing is just really exciting to me too. I think it was you that asked me on Instagram the other day, what's your favorite part of being a deacon? And a lot of deacons talk about connecting the world with the church. And I like to think of my role as connecting the church with the world. Like here's how God is moving in and amongst people, maybe places and things, and even through systems and ideas that might not necessarily be Christian. It would be maybe considered secular, and yet within that, God is moving and amongst that and part of that and within every single person. And I see a lot of the work that you're doing is similar to that, like helping for those who are maybe not sold on Christianity. This is a place where they might feel more welcome than like a church service. And then for those who are Christian, like you said, I love that they're alarmed. I think that that's some of the fun work of a deacon, is being a little bit alarming and pushing the boundaries and bringing them alongside and saying, see, this is another way that we can experience divine, and without the walls and without the categories. And as someone who likes categories, most of the time it's really fun to break those boundaries down and see God moving in different ways than what we expect.
And a lot of our focus at Westwood specifically is we're one of the few like exclusively inclusive campus ministries at KU. And so we also are getting a lot of students that maybe were very religious or practiced in a more conservative church growing up, who are part of the LGBTQ community. And so they might have been a little bit jaded for a while, but this is like a very good opportunity for them to open that relationship back up with God and do it on their own terms and be respected and loved and cared for. And so it's not only just like offering church for people in an inclusive space, but allowing them to really dive into that deeper relationship with them and form their own spiritual relationship with God again without any threats of feeling unsafe.
That's awesome. I love that so much. Having a safe space to reconstruct after deconstruction is really powerful and so vital. And I love seeing spaces like that open up. That's so wonderful. So so that's what you were doing before quarantine.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you're still staying connected with Westwood House folk during this time.
So we do prayer yoga this year every Monday. And so the first Monday after spring break, we had a Facebook Live and Instagram Live of the practice at 5 p.m. And so lots of people joined. And it's been really interesting too. Lots of people have reached out and asked questions. It's like over 400 people have seen the post or will watch it. And even if it's not them actually doing the practice with us, I know they can go back later. And also like lots of people from my congregation and other places in my life can kind of see how that exists and how they can implement it in their own lives. So it's been a great experience to open it up past the walls of my campus ministry. And then after that Monday, everyone was like, I'm so bored and I want to do prayer yoga every single day. And I was like, haha, no one's going to want to do that. I'm not doing it alone. And then people did want to do it. So we've also been doing a Zoom call for a more intimate setting for my campus ministry, Tuesday through Friday at noon every day since then as well. So we're doing it 5 days a week for about an hour. We take time for prayer requests and to pray with each other and for each other and really be able to have community in a way that we're not able to, especially as college students. And a lot of us are living in smaller communities on campus that are very close. And so we're not used to having 620 somethings right next to us. We're usually surrounded by our parents instead. And so it's been really nice to have that community, even in a small dose, and be able to share with each other.
That's awesome. How is everybody doing with the quarantine? Is it all over the place, or is it like, how are y'all doing okay? I mean, going from college setting to back home forced is, I imagine, tough.
We talked about it a lot the last couple of weeks at our online like Zoom worship service that we've been doing too. So there's been a lot of lamenting, and even though we're fully aware that a lot of the world is suffering in very serious ways, a lot of us are just kind of grieving like senior ceremonies or that spring formal that you are going to plan or you know March Madness.
Yeah,
Still not technically. So that's
right.
been really, really upsetting and just like kind of in disbelief. And then honestly, it feels like a similar. This is kind of dramatic, but it kind of feels like the same way I felt whenever after the special 2019 conference last year. Like I felt like I was ending a relationship, and I was like, "This is so sad. I don't get to have this anymore. I don't get to have this anymore." And so there's almost like a few stages of grief there too. Um,
Yeah.
but it's really nice to lament together and realize that we're not crazy for being sad and feeling that kind of. I think some students have said, like, they feel like something was kind of taken away from them, but they also, like, want people to be safe, so they would respect that, of course, but it's just been a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's hard. I mean, yeah, I've been talking with my role. I talk with folks who are in like the young family stage mostly, and then like youth pastors. And so, I mean, my brother is he's a little bit older than you, so I've gotten to like hear his experience a little bit, but I've spoken with college age people, but I haven't spoken with college students. So thank you for sharing that. That reflection. That's hard. And I can't imagine as someone who's supposed to be graduating and walking, like that's really frustrating. That's hard. So
I feel like it's been really helpful for me, like, to know that I'm going to grad school after this, and I'm really not that terribly upset about everything. Like, I'm just kind of at peace with it at this point. But there's like several people I know who they had job offers after May lined up, and now it's like, well, our business is closed, so maybe, but probably not. And so a lot of
right,
them are like, I literally have no idea. Lots of people are. It's just not the reality they think they were going to have when they're now like filing for unemployment, and not always having access to food. So like luckily my campus ministry has a food pantry that we've had open almost every weekday that people would be able to utilize, but not everyone has. I'm also working for student housing, so I'm very aware that like not everyone has a safe place to go home to, whether the relationships with their family are just very strained or unhealthy. That's something to recognize as well, as you're kind of like having this independence. All of a sudden, it's kind of yanked out from underneath you, and you're having to kind of go back into unhealthy places sometimes. And so, my heart really has been hurting for a lot of my residents who've experienced that and friends as well.
yeah, that's hard. If what can local churches do to support college students who are home?
Um, that's a good question. I think that again, like supporting organizations that are already have those connections with students, like a campus ministry, so donating to food pantries like we have at Westwood House, or just resources in general. But also, like we had a few international students that were a little unsure on where they were going to live after student housing was limiting their access to residence, and so like we had some churches near us offer some families that would love to have someone live with them. So that's an option, especially
Cool.
if someone like lots of people's parents downsize after they graduate high school. So a lot of people are like living in smaller spaces than they grew up in. Um, and so I think just also I've had people reach out from like my home church and email me and ask me what my plans after graduation, and just kind of reaching out and caring, especially when you're away from your home congregation for a couple years. That's really helpful. At least it was for me to know that they still really care about you and are invested in your success and your future. And so I think like sending an email, checking in, seeing if they need anything. Each person's very different. So several of my friends are still stuck in Lawrence. Some of them are also home. And so just kind of checking in and seeing what they need. I know Tonganoxie, I'm at the church, has sent out like a care survey, seeing what people need. And so that could be something that they could do. But
It's a
I
good
think
idea.
connection piece.
Yeah, that's good. So in the midst of all of this, have you seen like anything that makes you excited for, like, I mean, this can be a hard time, but are you seeing signs of hope or life or anything that's happening in your own life that makes you think like, I need to hold on to this for now?
I'm kind of feeling guilty because I'm actually not that upset right now. Like, I'm actually really excited. um, I have done like a lot of work, like researching in this last year how Gen Z connects with the church. And so um, I'm excited to kind of continue working on that. But also, like, we started a podcast. So I'm learning how to do podcasting within our campus ministry, our Bible studies. And it's just so nice as someone who always puts way too much on their plate to have it just like wiped clean. Like, I'm working so many less hours a week for one job, which is, negative because of cost, but also it's like such a relief to have that kind of like energy put back into you. There's this like vine or gif or something that it's like a plant and then you put it back in water and it like revitalize.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like a meme that college students say that happens to them when they go home for breaks. And I'm like, well, does this mean I'm never gonna be shriveled up again? Like
Right.
I don't know. It's just kind of nice. And I love being able to connect to people more deeply now. I like don't have anything distracting me and I can really focus my energy on listening and talking with them. And so I think that that's a unique opportunity I would have never had if I would have just been in the regular semester and graduating.
That's awesome. Okay, I didn't give you this question, but I'm interested to hear your perspective. If I've put you on the spot, just say you've put me on the spot. I'm not answering that question. Let's move on. But part of what I do is advocate for Gen Z. I am a millennial, but I try to keep up. I do. I don't always succeed, but I try to keep up and I try to research and advocate for Gen Z because I truly believe that your generation, like, y'all are going to change the world. I really do believe that. And so I am seeing lament from churches like, oh, the young people, they're not in the church. And I feel like this is the time that like churches are finally becoming creative and innovative. And you're telling me that people your age are wanting to connect every single day like that. Like, to me, this is an opportunity for churches to open their eyes and realize that there are plenty of people who are longing for spiritual growth. It may just not look like what you think it looks like. And so as the token Gen Z in this conversation, I've been a token millennial for a while. As the token Gen Z, like, now is your time to advocate for the people that are your age. What if you could say anything to churches now on behalf of Generation Z, what would you like to say?
The church doesn't need to exist as it currently does, and it's going to kind of maybe be a grieving process, but that's okay. There's a fresh expressions movement, which I don't always fully agree with, but there's lots of parts of it I do like, which is like expressing church outside of the walls of the church. But what I think that is really important to remember is a lot of my generation is part of like the LGBTQ community, and the walls of the church are hurtful for them. Like they've experienced real trauma there. And so being able to open it up and like really showing them that it's not just, yes, you can come here and worship here, but yes, you are more than tolerated, you are accepted and loved and embraced. And so that might be something totally different, whether it's, like worshiping outside or worshiping at a prayer yoga kind of situation. I also think that the church assumes all Gen Z wants contemporary worship, and I don't think that's true. And that's actually some of the research I did last fall in a psychology class. And so I tested like if Gen Z preferred traditional contemporary or a hybrid of the two, and the results were mixed, but it definitely was not exclusively contemporary. And so I think instead of just like sitting in a church council meeting and pretending like you know exactly what someone needs or wants, if you want your church to die, then sure, keep doing that. But frankly, like you can't have new life coming into this church if you're not having people part of the conversation. I was really grateful I got to serve at Tonganoxie, like thanks to Jeff Klinger and everything. in 7th grade on my church council. That is not normal, I've learned. And
No, it's not.
It's not normal for like a 7th grader to really want to do that either, but
That's also true.
but I got to do it, and I not only like, yes, I might not have had the most wonderful insight compared to like someone who had more life experience, but I was able to advocate for people my age and be able to have my voice heard, which was even not even necessarily if my voice was used later on, but the fact that I was able to be part of that conversation was transformative for me and made me feel like I was a part of the church and I took ownership of it, and it continued to encourage me to do so as I got older. And I think a lot of people are just used to having, so like the reality is we have so many things to choose from when we're in middle school and in high school. And if you feel like space is not being made for you, why would you choose that over something else? Like if you feel like
Mm,
you don't have a place or you can't make an impact somewhere, when instead if you could be like on a club volleyball team or doing competitive cheer or like literally anything else that you think you really can have like an opportunity for leadership and to be heard and listen and just cared for, I don't really see why you would stay in that place other than just like the religious obligation. And
mm.
so that's something I think the churches should really consider as they see like their middle schoolers and high schoolers kind of veering off when it comes to church and youth group kind of things.
That's really helpful. Yeah. I hear that. If there's a space for you, if you're on the team, so to speak, and you know that you have a position and a place and other people are counting on you, that's very different than just, hey, come to this one thing. It doesn't really matter if you come or not, creating leadership opportunities and giving, like, I want to push back. You said that you may not have had as much insight as someone else, but I think 7th graders, I think all people have different insight, yet still insight. And, I think about, so by the time we got to Tonganoxie, Emma Skelly was on the board. She was the 6th or 7th grader that was like representing the young people. And she asked questions about why we do things the way that we do, and it made us think about like, well, why do we actually do it that way? And she was wanting to learn. It wasn't like she was trying to stump us, but her like desire to learn more and explore and to contribute made us rethink the systems. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about having young people in the room is y'all want to make a difference, and you are willing to ask those hard questions that make people in power rethink. And I think that's a really good thing, and it's incredibly insightful. So thank you for sharing that. That was very much so. I did put you on the spot, but I you have great thoughts and great insight, and also as someone on Deacon track, I feel like you were very willing to say some things that might be a little cage rattling, which is good. We need prophetic voices. So thank you for sharing that. I have one last thing to ask you. How are you surviving during self-quarantine?
Luckily, with my work with my campus ministry, I'm keeping very busy. So I'm still working or doing schoolwork like pretty much as soon as I wake up until dinner time. But I'm like making sure to really do the things that I didn't get to do whenever I was busy with school. So I'm getting to make myself dinner every night and eating it and relaxing and like watching a show afterwards. And I'm making sure to talk to at least one person that's different each day, like really reaching out, knowing that there's not times that I'm always like happy having a good time. And that means that someone else is also having that experience. So being aware, even if you're really struggling, knowing that like reaching out will also help you in addition to the other person. And so that's something really important. I spend a lot of time on Zoom calls and FaceTime calls. Something that my campus ministry is doing that might be helpful if the church wants to help like college students or students that are living near them, is that if you have like a Zoom account that is premium or plus that you're paying more for, you can have unlimited calls with unlimited amounts of people. And so we're having links sent out for like study groups so that they can actually all be on the call together for free.
That's good.
Because the campus ministry is paying for it, or the church might be able to do that for groups outside. And so I think that that's something too, because otherwise you're limited via like through FaceTime or Google Hangouts, which might not always work for everyone on their device. But I'm good. I'm just taking it one day at a time because I obviously get kind of lonely not being surrounded by my peers that I'm used to like for the last 3 years, but just trying to be grateful for what I do have and talk about things with people when I am upset and showering often-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
My big thing is wearing real pants every day. And I think leggings count as real pants, but I just can't do sweats. That's my mental health thing. So I hear you about the shower too.
and honestly, prayer yoga has really helped doing that every day because it's really centering and gets you to move your body even if you're inside. So
That's really great. I shared your live video to a Great Plains discipleship group, and they loved it, and I loved it. I didn't do the whole thing, but I did a little bit with you too. So I appreciate your ministry, and that's just I love what you're doing, and I love that it's become something that people want to do every day. I love that's part of their own faith formation, and thank you for leading that. And thank you for sharing with me. It was great to see your face and hear your voice again. And I look forward to hearing more about your research on Generation Z.
thank you. Me too. Hopefully, I had an internship lined up, but another program I applied to has canceled for the whole summer. So I'm hoping that I have a job this summer, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. I hope that you do as well.
Thank you.
All right, Grace, I will talk to you later.
Okay. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.